They say blood is thicker than water, but nobody warns you that sometimes blood can drown you. I couldn't believe what I was seeing on my phone. My own mother standing on my doorstep in the freezing cold, 3 crying kids beside her, screaming my name like I'd committed some unforgivable crime. The truth? I wasn't even in the same country. See, my family had this little habit of treating me like their personal servant, the convenient one who'd drop everything because I worked from home and didn't have a real life. But this time, they crossed a line I didn't even know existed. My mom had lied. Actually lied to 23 relatives, saying I'd volunteered to watch my brother's kids for 4 days over Christmas. I'd said no, multiple times, but apparently, my no didn't matter when it interfered with their plans. So they showed up anyway, fully expecting to dump 3 children on my doorstep and disappear to their adults-only vacation. What happened next changed everything. The shocking reality of what I did, or rather, what I didn't do, exposed years of family betrayal, humiliation, and manipulation that I'd been swallowing in silence. And the karma that followed? Let's just say revenge is a dish best served from a cruise ship in Mexico while watching your family implode through a doorbell camera. This is the story of how I finally chose my dignity over their convenience, and why sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is absolutely nothing at all. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. I mean, it was like someone had set off a bomb in my family group chat, and I was supposedly standing right at ground zero. My mom's voice came through in a string of angry voice messages, each one louder than the last. "Alice, where are you? Your brother's at your door with the kids. Open up right now." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The audacity, the sheer nerve of assuming I'd just drop everything because they decided I was the family's permanent backup plan. But here's the thing. They had no idea I wasn't even in the same country. See, my mom had this tone she always used, that syrupy sweet manipulation wrapped in motherly concern when she wanted something from me. 2 days earlier, she'd called saying my older brother Josh and his wife needed a little break and that I should take their 3 kids, ages 2, 4, and 6, for the holiday weekend. I'd said no. I'd said I had work deadlines, that I couldn't just rearrange my entire life on 2 days' notice. But apparently, no doesn't exist in my family's vocabulary when it comes to me. They hear what they want to hear, rewrite the narrative, and suddenly I'm the villain for having boundaries. The backstabbed feeling hit me hard when I saw the email my mom had sent to the extended family. She'd written that I was so excited to spend quality time with my nieces and nephew that I'd offered to help out. Lies. Complete calculated lies designed to trap me into compliance. If I backed out now, I'd be the bad guy who disappointed everyone, who let down innocent children. It was manipulation 101, and I'd watched this playbook my entire adult life. But this time, the humiliation of being volunteered without consent lit something inside me. I was tired of being treated like the convenient one, the one whose time didn't matter because I worked from home and didn't have a husband or kids of my own. My family saw my flexibility as availability, my independence as loneliness that needed filling with their needs. Every holiday, every emergency, every quick favor, it always landed on me. And the worst part? They never asked. They announced, assumed, demanded. My brother Josh acted like his life was the only one with real pressure, real responsibilities, while mine was just, what? A hobby? Something I did to pass time until I could serve them. So when my mom made her proposal, which was really just a command dressed up as a request, I knew exactly what was happening. She'd said, "Alice, honey, Josh and Kelly really need this break. You understand, don't you? You're so good with kids, and your schedule is flexible. Family helps family." That last line, that goddamn line that had guilted me into 1,000 sacrifices. But this time, I'd already made my decision. I'd already booked the cruise to Mexico, changed my locks, installed security cameras, and arranged my work projects. I wasn't negotiating anymore. The revenge wasn't loud or dramatic. It was silent, strategic, and absolutely devastating. While they were pounding on my door in the cold December evening, while my brother was screaming into his phone and my mom was having a full meltdown on my doorstep, I was sipping a margarita on a sun deck in Cozumel. The camera app on my phone was sending me live notifications, and I watched every second of their confusion turn to panic, turn to rage. 3 kids crying, Kelly looking murderous, Josh pacing like a caged animal, and my mom. Oh, my mom. Her face was priceless when she realized I wasn't coming to the door, that I wasn't there at all. Let me paint you a picture of what my life looked like before this whole thing exploded. I'm 30 years old. I run a successful graphic design business from home, and apparently, that makes me the family's unpaid childcare service, because I don't clock in at an office, because I don't have a husband waiting for me at home, because I don't have my own kids demanding my attention. My family genuinely believes I have nothing but free time. They see my life as empty space just waiting to be filled with their needs, their emergencies, their convenience. The betrayal of that assumption cuts deeper than any single incident ever could. My brother Josh has always been the golden child. Married young, had kids, bought a house in the suburbs, did everything right according to our mother's vision. Meanwhile, I chose a different path. I built a business, I travel when I want, I've created a life that's mine. But in my family's eyes, that translates to available. Every school pickup when Kelly had appointments, every weekend they wanted alone time, every holiday gathering where they needed an extra pair of hands. Guess who got the call? Not our younger sister who lives 3 states away, not our cousins, me, always me. Because I was already there and didn't have other commitments. The truth is, I'd been the convenient one since my early 20s. When Josh and Kelly got married, I spent weekends helping them move, paint their nursery, assemble furniture, while they made plans with their actual friends. When the first baby came, I was expected to show up with meals, offer to babysit, and never complain about my own exhaustion because their exhaustion was real parenting. My achievements got summarized in 30 seconds at family dinners, while Josh's promotion or Kelly's PTA involvement got 20-minute discussions. My self-worth had been slowly eroded by 1,000 small moments of being invisible. What really stung was how they'd rewritten my personality to fit their narrative. I wasn't someone who valued independence. I was someone who didn't have anything going on. I wasn't someone who worked hard. I was someone with flexible hours who could drop everything. I wasn't child-free by choice. I was just someone who loved being an aunt and would jump at any chance to be around kids. They'd stripped away my actual identity and replaced it with a character that served their purposes. The humiliation of realizing this had been going on for years made my stomach turn. And here's where it gets really twisted. They made me feel guilty for wanting my own life. When I'd say I couldn't babysit because I had a deadline, my mom would sigh heavily and say, "Well, I guess we'll figure something out," with that wounded tone that screamed disappointment. When I'd mention a trip I was planning, Kelly would make comments about how nice it must be to have no responsibilities. When I'd talk about my business growing, Josh would say something like, "Yeah, but it's not like you're supporting a family, so the pressure's different, right?" Every single accomplishment was diminished. Every boundary was guilted. But the thing about being constantly undervalued is that eventually, something breaks. You either break down and accept that you're worth less than everyone else, or you break free and reclaim your dignity. I'd been hovering at that crossroads for months, maybe years, watching my family take and take and take while giving nothing back. Not respect, not appreciation, not even basic acknowledgement that my time had value. What they didn't know was that their latest demand, the one about keeping 3 kids for 4 days with less than 48 hours notice, was about to be the catalyst for something they never saw coming. There's this moment that haunts me, this one specific memory that crystallized everything wrong with my family dynamic. Christmas, 2 years ago. I'd spent 3 full days at my mom's house preparing for the big family gathering, decorating the massive tree, wrapping everyone's presents because you're so good at making them look pretty, cooking side dishes, and yes, watching Josh and Kelly's kids while they went to holiday parties. I showed up as the helper, the support system, the invisible hand that made everything run smoothly. I thought I was being a good daughter, a good sister, a good aunt. I couldn't believe how wrong I was about what that effort actually meant to them. Christmas morning arrived with all its chaos and joy. The kids were ripping through presents, adults were laughing and taking photos, and I was in the corner of the living room holding Josh's youngest, a 6-month-old who'd finally fallen asleep after screaming through the entire gift exchange. My arms were aching, my back was sore, but I stayed quiet because this was family time, and I was contributing by keeping the baby calm. Then my mom announced it was time for the annual family photo. Everyone started gathering by the tree, arranging themselves in that practiced way families do. Tallest in back, kids in front. Nobody called my name. Not one person looked around and said, "Where's Alice?" I watched from my spot, gently rocking a sleeping infant, as my mother directed everyone into position. Josh and Kelly front and center with their older 2 kids. My mom and dad flanking them. Even my aunt and uncle who'd driven in from Pittsburgh got pulled into the frame. The photographer, my mom's friend Carol, started counting down. 3, 2, 1, click. The shutter captured a moment of perfect family unity, and I wasn't in it. I was 10 feet away, visible in the background if you looked closely enough, but clearly not part of what mattered. The humiliation didn't hit immediately. It was a slow burn that started when I realized no one had noticed. The photo got taken. Everyone dispersed back to their conversations and their plates of food, and life moved on. I spent the rest of the day cycling through emotions, telling myself it was an accident, that they'd just forgotten, that it wasn't personal. But when I offered to help clean up later and my mom said, "Oh, honey, you've done so much already," without a trace of irony or acknowledgement that I'd been excluded from the family photo, something inside me cracked. This was my worth, present enough to serve, invisible enough to erase. But here's where the knife really twisted. That photo went up on my mother's living room wall. Not just for a few weeks or months, for 2 entire years. Every time I visited, there it was. A glossy 16:20 testament to my place in the family hierarchy. Sometimes I'd stare at it, looking for myself in the blurry background, holding that baby like some kind of hired help who accidentally got captured in the frame. My mom would walk past it a dozen times during my visits, straightening it, dusting the frame, commenting on how lovely everyone looked. She never once seemed to register that I wasn't really in it, that I'd been there, doing the work, but hadn't been deemed worthy of the memory. That photo became a symbol of everything I'd accepted for too long. It was proof, literal, framed, displayed proof, that my family saw me as supporting cast, not a main character. When my mom's friends would visit and compliment the picture, she'd beam and talk about her beautiful family, and I'd wonder if she even remembered I existed outside of the role I played in making her life easier. The betrayal wasn't just about one forgotten photo. It was about years of being the one who showed up, who sacrificed, who bent over backward, only to be cropped out of the narrative. And that wound was still fresh, still bleeding, when my mother had the audacity to volunteer me for 4 days of childcare without even asking. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was in the middle of a client presentation. My mom's name lit up my screen 3 times before I finally excused myself and answered. Her voice was honey sweet, that particular tone she uses when she wants something but needs you to think it was your idea all along. "Alice, sweetheart, I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." Classic opening. The concern was performative, because she'd keep talking regardless of my answer. I said I had 5 minutes, and she laughed that tinkling laugh that used to make me feel warm and now just made my shoulders tense. "So, I've been thinking," she began, and I already knew where this was going. "Josh and Kelly have been under so much pressure lately. You know how it is with 3 little ones and both of them working full-time. They really need a break, and I thought, we thought, it would be wonderful if the kids could spend Christmas Eve through the 27th or 28th with you. Just a few days of quality aunt time, and it would give Josh and Kelly a chance to reconnect and recharge. Doesn't that sound lovely? The way she phrased it. Like she was offering me a gift. Like I should be grateful for the opportunity to sacrifice my holiday plans. The manipulation was so smooth, so practiced, I almost didn't catch it. I took a breath and said what I should have said 100 times before. "Mom, I can't. I have work deadlines that week, and I've made other plans for the holidays. I'm sorry, but the answer is no." The silence on the other end lasted exactly 3 seconds before her tone shifted. Not angry. She's too smart for that. Wounded. disappointed. Alice, honey, your work schedule is flexible. That's the beauty of what you do. And what plans could be more important than family? Your brother is dealing with real pressure. His boss is demanding, Kelly's exhausted, and they need this. Surely you can understand that family helps family when help is needed. There it was. The gentle dismissal of my career as something frivolous, something that could be paused like a Netflix show whenever real life, their life, required it. The implication that my plans, whatever they were, couldn't possibly be as legitimate or important as their needs. And that phrase again, family helps family. No, it was her trump card, the thing she'd used to guilt me into compliance since I was old enough to babysit. But this time, I held firm. Mom, I really can't do it. My answer is no. I could hear her breathing change, that little intake of breath that signaled she was recalibrating her strategy. Well, she said slowly, I'm just worried about you, sweetheart. You spend so much time alone, working on that computer. This could be good for you too. Some life, some laughter, some purpose during the holidays. You know, Kelly mentioned the other day that you seemed a little disconnected at Thanksgiving. We just want you to feel included, like you're part of something. The poison was delivered so sweetly I almost missed it. She'd just implied I was lonely, purposeless, and excluded, while simultaneously positioning the burden of childcare as the solution to problems I didn't have. It was masterful, really. Reframe the rejection as self-harm, make me sound like I was refusing my own happiness. I ended the call with another firm no, my hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline of standing my ground. But I wasn't naive enough to think that was the end of it. My mother doesn't accept rejection. She just changes tactics. And sure enough, within hours, the real manipulation began. Because when you tell a narcissist no, they don't respect your boundary. They build a narrative that erases it entirely, and they make sure everyone else buys into that narrative before you even realize what's happening. The trap was already being set, and I was about to discover just how far my family would go to force my compliance. I found out about the lie completely by accident. My cousin Rachel texted me Thursday night saying how sweet it was that I'd volunteered to take the kids for Christmas, and how she wished she lived closer so she could do the same for her siblings. I stared at that message for a full minute, my brain struggling to process what I was reading. Volunteered? I hadn't volunteered for anything. I'd explicitly said no, multiple times. The shock of realizing my mother had rewritten reality sent ice through my veins. But I needed proof before I could fully believe the betrayal was this calculated. Rachel mentioned something about an email, so I opened my laptop and searched through my inbox with hands that wouldn't stay steady. There it was, buried in the family group thread I'd been ignoring for days. A message from my mother, sent to 23 relatives, with the subject line, Christmas arrangements and blessings. My stomach dropped as I read her words. I'm so grateful that Alice has offered to care for Josh and Kelly's children from December 24th through the 28th, so they can have some much-needed couple time. She's always been so generous with her time and love, and the kids are absolutely thrilled to spend the holidays with their favorite aunt. What a blessing she is to our family. The rage that filled me was unlike anything I'd felt before. This wasn't just manipulation. This was premeditated entrapment. My mother had created a public record of a lie, a documented truth that would make me look like a monster if I contradicted it. If I backed out now, I wouldn't just be disappointing my brother and his wife. I'd be breaking a promise to 3 innocent children, letting down the entire extended family who now believed I'd volunteered for this, and proving myself to be unreliable and selfish. She'd backed me into a corner where my only options were compliance or villainhood. The woman was a goddamn criminal mastermind. I scrolled through the replies, each one making me feel sicker. Aunt Linda, Alice, you're such a good sister. Uncle Tom, those kids are lucky to have you. My grandmother, this is what family is all about, supporting each other. So proud of you, sweetheart. 23 people now believed a complete fabrication. And if I told the truth, I'd be calling my mother a liar in front of the entire family. She'd positioned herself perfectly, the grateful mother praising her daughter's generosity, with no hint that this offer had been rejected multiple times. I couldn't believe the sheer audacity, the calculated cruelty of it. The worst part was seeing Josh's reply in the thread. "Thanks so much, Em. Kelly and I really need this break. The kids are already packing their favorite toys. We'll drop them off around 2 p.m. on the 24th. Does that work?" He'd responded as if we'd already discussed everything, as if my consent was a foregone conclusion. Not a single question mark about whether this actually worked for me, not one acknowledgement that plans should maybe be confirmed with the person supposedly hosting. Just assumption, entitlement, and coordination happening around me like I was a venue they'd booked, rather than a human being with autonomy. I sat there in my home office, laptop screen glowing in the darkness, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. This wasn't just about one holiday or one childcare request. This was a pattern, a system, a family dynamic built on the assumption that my life existed to service theirs, and they'd gotten so comfortable with that arrangement that they didn't even bother pretending to ask anymore. They just announced, manipulated, and trapped. The humiliation of being cornered this way, of having my no erased and rewritten as enthusiastic yes, was the final straw. They wanted to play games with my boundaries? Fine. But they were about to learn that I'd gotten very, very good at playing games too. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy. Someone outside the family dysfunction who could look at this situation objectively and confirm that what I was feeling was justified. So I called my best friend Marley, the one person who'd witnessed years of this pattern and had been biting her tongue about it for far too long. Before I even finished explaining what my mother had done with the email, Marley was already swearing. "Alice, that's not manipulation. That's entrapment. That's textbook narcissistic behavior. She created a narrative that makes you the villain if you don't comply. Do you see what she did? She made it impossible for you to say no without looking like the bad guy." Marley had studied psychology in college and worked as a therapist now. So when she started breaking down the tactics my family was using, I listened. "This is about control," she explained, her voice tight with anger on my behalf. "They've been conditioning you for years to believe that your boundaries don't matter, that your time isn't valuable, that saying no makes you selfish. And now they've escalated to public manipulation because private guilt wasn't working anymore. Alice, this is abuse. Financial abuse, emotional abuse. Calling it anything else is just making excuses for them." The truth of her words hit me like a physical blow, and suddenly years of interactions reframed themselves in my mind. But then Marley said something that made my blood run cold. "You know what really worries me? The legal implications. If they actually show up and leave those kids with you, or try to, and you refuse, they could accuse you of abandonment. Or if something happened to one of the kids while they're in your care without proper legal guardianship papers, you could be held liable. Have they even discussed medical authorization? Emergency contacts? What if one of the kids gets hurt and you can't make medical decisions?" I hadn't thought about any of that. I'd been so focused on the emotional violation that I hadn't considered the practical nightmare. She continued, and every word made me realize how deep this trap actually went. And here's the thing about people who manipulate like this. They never stop at one boundary violation. If you give in now, if you let them steamroll you on this, it sets the precedent that they can lie, manipulate, and publicly trap you into doing whatever they want. Next time it'll be bigger. Maybe they'll volunteer your house for Thanksgiving, or tell people you're co-signing a loan, or who knows what else. The pattern doesn't end until you end it. The clarity she was offering felt both validating and terrifying because ending it meant war. Marley asked me what I wanted to do. And for the first time, I said out loud what had been forming in my mind since I'd read that email. I want them to face consequences, real consequences. I'm tired of being the one who absorbs all the dysfunction while they just keep taking. I want my dignity back. There was a pause, and then Marley said something I'll never forget. "Then don't negotiate. Don't explain. Don't defend yourself or try to make them understand. Just don't be there. Let them show up to an empty house and figure it out themselves. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting people experience the natural consequences of their own behavior." The idea was radical and terrifying and absolutely perfect. No confrontation, no screaming match, no trying to prove my point while they talked over me and gaslit me into believing I was wrong. Just absence. just the simple, devastating reality that I wouldn't be there to catch them when they fell. Marley helped me think through the logistics, changing locks so they couldn't use an old key, setting up cameras for my own protection, arranging work projects in advance, and yes, booking that cruise I'd been dreaming about for months. We spent 3 hours on the phone that night, and by the end of it, I had a plan. A secret, strategic, absolutely devastating plan that would finally force my family to reckon with the truth they'd been avoiding. My time had value, my boundaries were real, and I was done being convenient. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. No more second-guessing, no more guilt, no more trying to make them see reason. I was done negotiating with people who didn't respect me enough to listen. My first call was to a locksmith. I told him I needed my locks changed by end of day, and I'd pay extra for the rush job. Then I called a security company about installing cameras at my front and back doors with an app that would let me monitor everything remotely. The woman on the phone asked if I was worried about break-ins, and I almost laughed. Something like that, I said. What I was really worried about was witnessing the exact moment my family's entitlement crashed into reality. Next came the work logistics. I emailed my 3 biggest clients explaining that I'd be unreachable December 24th through 29th due to a planned vacation, and I front-loaded all my deliverables to be completed by the 22nd. I worked 16-hour days that week, fueled by rage and determination, making sure there was no legitimate excuse for me to cancel my plans. Every completed project felt like armor I was putting on, protection against the inevitable accusations that I was being irresponsible or flaky. By December 20th, my slate was clean, my clients were happy, and I had 0 professional obligations that could be used against me. Then came the most satisfying part, booking the cruise. I'd been looking at this Mexican Riviera trip for months, always talking myself out of it because it felt too indulgent, too expensive, too much just for me. But now it felt like the ultimate act of reclaiming my self-worth. I booked a balcony suite, splurged on the beverage package, and signed up for every shore excursion that looked remotely interesting. Cabo, Mazatlan, Puerto Vallarta. I was going to be living my best life while my family imploded. The revenge wasn't about hurting them. It was about finally choosing myself, and that felt revolutionary. I didn't tell anyone about my plans. Not my mother, not Josh, not even the cousins who'd been so complimentary about my fictional generosity. I just let the lie sit there in that email chain, growing roots, becoming accepted truth. My mom called twice more to coordinate details, and I let those calls go to voicemail. Josh texted asking what kind of snacks the kids should bring, and I didn't respond. The silence from my end should have been a red flag, but they were so confident in their manipulation, so sure that social pressure and guilt had locked me in, that they never questioned whether I'd actually be there. Their certainty in my compliance was the very thing that would destroy them. The locksmith came on December 22nd. Watching him install those new locks felt like watching someone build a fortress around my peace of mind. I tested the cameras obsessively, checking angles, making sure the audio worked, confirming that my phone would receive instant notifications. I packed for my trip with a giddiness that felt almost childlike. Sundresses, swimsuits, sandals, that novel I'd been meaning to read. I bought new sunglasses. I got my nails done. I was preparing for battle by refusing to show up to the battlefield at all, and the irony was delicious. On December 23rd, I loaded my suitcase into my car at 4 a.m., drove to the airport, and boarded my flight to Los Angeles where the cruise ship was departing. As the plane took off and Denver got smaller beneath me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. The weight of their expectations, their demands, their constant assumption that I existed to serve them. It was falling away with every mile. My phone was on airplane mode. My house was locked and monitored. And in less than 24 hours, my family was going to show up expecting compliance and find nothing but their own reflection in my absence. The karma they'd earned was about to be delivered, and I was going to watch every second of it from a beach chair with a drink in my hand. I was 2 margaritas deep on the pool deck when my phone started buzzing with camera notifications. It was 2:17 p.m. on December 24th, and I watched my screen light up with motion alerts from my front door. My heart started racing, not from fear, but from pure, undiluted anticipation. I opened the app and there they were, in crystal clear HD, my mother's SUV pulling into my driveway, followed by Josh's minivan. I could see car seats in the back, luggage strapped to the roof, and 3 small faces pressed against the windows. The shocking reality of what they'd actually planned to do, just dump 3 kids and drive away, made my hands shake slightly as I held my phone. Josh was the first one out, and even through the camera I could see his confident stride. He wasn't worried. He wasn't uncertain. He walked up to my front door like he owned the place, like his sister's home was just an extension of his own convenience. He rang the doorbell. Once, twice, 3 times. I watched him check his watch, then turn back to the cars where Kelly was starting to unbuckle kids. My mother was getting out slowly, arranging her purse, that serene smile on her face like she was arriving at a pleasant family gathering. None of them looked concerned. Not yet. The betrayal of watching them execute this plan so casually, so confidently, made me want to scream and laugh at the same time. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Josh knocked harder now, that entitled pounding that said, "I know you're in there." I could see him cup his hands against my front window, trying to peer inside. My mother joined him at the door, and I cranked up the volume on my phone to hear the audio. "Alice! Sweetheart, we're here! Open up, honey!" Her voice was still sweet, still patient, like maybe I was just in the bathroom or on a work call. Kelly had all 3 kids out of the car now, and they were starting to get fussy in the cold. The 2-year-old was crying. The 4-year-old kept asking where Aunt Alice was. The 6-year-old looked confused and cold. That's when Josh pulled out his phone and started calling me. My phone, sitting next to my margarita on a table overlooking the Mexican coastline, started ringing. I declined the call. He tried again. Declined. Then the texts started pouring in. "Em, where are you? Are you okay? We're at your door. This isn't funny." I watched through the camera as his expression shifted from confident to confused to angry. He said something to my mother, gesturing aggressively at the door. She pulled out her own phone, and seconds later I declined her call too. That's when I saw her face change on camera. That moment of realization that something was very, very wrong. The panic set in around the 15-minute mark. Kelly was trying to keep the kids entertained on my front porch, but they were cold and confused and starting to really cry. Josh was pacing my driveway, phone pressed to his ear, calling me over and over. My mother had that look she gets when control is slipping away. Lips pressed thin, eyes darting, that rigid posture that screamed internal rage. I heard her snap at Josh. "She has to be here. She said she'd be here." And Josh yelled back, "No, you said she'd be here. Did you actually talk to her?" The truth was starting to crack through their delusion, and it was beautiful. Then my neighbor, Mr. Peterson, came out onto his porch, arms crossed, clearly annoyed by the commotion. I couldn't hear exactly what was said, but I saw him gesture firmly and say something that made my mother's face go white. Josh threw up his hands. Kelly started crying while trying to console 3 confused, cold kids. They were stuck, completely, utterly stuck, with 3 children, no childcare plan, and the humiliating realization that I wasn't coming to save them. I watched them load the kids back into the car, watched my mother's hands shake as she tried to buckle a car seat, watched Josh punch my doorbell one last time with pure rage before storming off, and I felt nothing but vindicated justice as they drove away, their adults-only holiday crumbling in real time. My phone was exploding with messages. 17 missed calls, 34 texts, and the family group chat was absolute chaos. I sipped my margarita, saved the doorbell camera footage to my cloud storage as evidence, and scrolled through the rage with detached amusement. Josh. "Where the hell are you?" Mom. "Alice, this is unacceptable. Call me immediately." Kelly. "You promised you'd watch them." More lies. More rewriting of reality. But this time, I had 23 witnesses who'd seen my mother's email, and I was about to set the record straight in the most devastating way possible. No explanations, no justifications, no defending myself against their accusations. Just one simple, undeniable truth. I opened the family group chat and attached a single photo. Me on the ship's deck, ocean stretching endlessly behind me, a cocktail in my hand, wearing sunglasses and a sundress with the biggest smile on my face. The caption was short and sweet. Having an amazing time in Mexico. Couldn't believe I almost let work stress keep me from this trip I booked 3 weeks ago. Sometimes you just have to choose yourself. Hope everyone has a wonderful holiday. I hit send and watched the typing indicators explode across the screen. The shocking simplicity of it. Not arguing, not defending, just existing happily somewhere else, was going to hurt them more than any angry confrontation ever could. The responses came in waves. First, confusion from the extended family members, who were just now realizing something was wrong. Wait, I thought you were watching Josh's kids. Weren't you supposed to be in Denver? Then came the direct attacks from my mother and brother in the group chat, which was a mistake on their part because now everyone could see their rage in real time. Josh, are you kidding me right now? You agreed to this. My mother, Alice Louise, this is completely irresponsible. Those children were counting on you. And that's when I delivered the knockout punch that I'd been saving. I replied to the group thread with a single sentence. I never agreed to watch anyone's children. In fact, I said no multiple times. Then I did something I'd never had the courage to do before. I called them out publicly. Mom, you sent that email claiming I'd offered without ever confirming with me. I have voicemail recordings of me declining. This was never my responsibility. The silence that followed was deafening. 23 people were now seeing the truth. That my mother had lied. That Josh had assumed. That I'd been trapped into something I'd explicitly refused. The humiliation was theirs now, not mine. And it felt like breathing pure oxygen after years of suffocating. My phone started ringing immediately. Josh, my mother, Kelly, even my Aunt Linda trying to mediate. I declined every call. I wasn't going to get drawn into a conversation where they could talk over me, gaslight me, or twist my words. The evidence spoke for itself. I was in another country, on a trip I'd booked before my mother's email went out, living my life exactly as I'd planned. Their emergency was never my responsibility, and their assumption that it was had just been exposed to the entire family. Some relatives started messaging me privately. My cousin Rachel apologized for not questioning the story. Uncle Tom sent a simple "good for you," and even my grandmother, normally my mother's biggest defender, sent a measured text saying, "We need to talk about respect." I turned off my notifications after that, ordered another drink, and went to watch the sunset from my balcony. The payback wasn't about making them suffer. It was about refusing to suffer for them anymore. I'd spent years absorbing their dysfunction, bending to their demands, sacrificing my dignity to keep the peace. And what had it gotten me? A cropped-out family photo and the assumption that my life existed to service theirs. But tonight, while they were dealing with the consequences of their manipulation, I was watching the sun sink into the Pacific Ocean, feeling lighter than I had in a decade. The truth had been exposed, my boundaries had been enforced, and I hadn't had to argue a single point. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Just live your life and let them choke on their own entitlement. The fallout was spectacular, and I didn't even have to be there to witness it. Over the next few days, pieced together from screenshots my cousin Rachel sent me and vague posts on social media, I watched my family's carefully constructed holiday plans collapse like a house of cards. Without me as their backup, Josh and Kelly had nowhere to put the kids. Their romantic cabin getaway? Canceled. The couple's spa weekend they'd bragged about to friends? Gone. They ended up driving back to my mother's house with 3 crying, confused children and spending Christmas in the same chaos they'd tried to escape. The poetic justice of it was almost too perfect. My mother, who'd orchestrated this whole manipulation, found herself trapped in her own web. She'd promised Josh and Kelly that I would take the kids. She'd guaranteed it, staked her credibility on it. When that fell through because of her lies, suddenly she became the villain in their story. I heard through the grapevine that Kelly had a complete meltdown, screaming at my mother about how she'd ruined their marriage's one chance to reconnect. Josh apparently went silent and cold, that passive-aggressive punishment he learned from our mother herself. The house was packed with 3 adults who resented each other, and 3 kids picking up on all that tension. Christmas dinner was reportedly eaten in near silence. But the consequences went beyond just a ruined holiday. My mother is deeply invested in her reputation. She's the church volunteer, the community organizer, the woman everyone thinks has the perfect family. When word got out that she'd lied about her daughter's availability and caused this whole disaster, people started talking. Her friend Carol, the one who took that Christmas photo 2 years ago, apparently asked pointed questions about family dynamics. Women in her book club were giving her sideways looks. The betrayal she'd inflicted on me was now social currency being spent at her expense, and for someone who lives and breathes on others' approval, that was devastating. Josh and Kelly's relationship took hits too. Without the romantic getaway to reconnect, they spent the holiday picking at each other's parenting, snapping over logistics, and resenting the kids for needing attention. I later found out that Kelly had been telling her friends for weeks about this amazing reset they were planning, and having to admit it fell through, because Josh's family was dysfunctional and unreliable, was humiliating for her. She started distancing herself from family events, stopped responding to my mother's texts with enthusiasm, and I heard rumors they were considering moving to Kelly's home state to be closer to her parents instead. The karma was hitting everyone who'd participated in trying to trap me. The extended family dynamics shifted too. Those 23 people on that email chain had watched everything unfold in real time. They'd seen my mother lie, seen Josh and Kelly assume and demand, and seen me calmly enforce a boundary while living my best life. Some took my mother's side, calling me selfish and dramatic, but more, way more than I expected, started reassessing how they'd seen our family. Cousin Rachel told me she'd started thinking about all the times I'd been volunteered for things or pushed aside, and how normalized it had become. Uncle Tom apparently had words with my mother about respecting people's time. The narrative was shifting, and I hadn't had to fight for a single inch of it. And here's what really broke them. They couldn't even fully hate me because I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't canceled plans. I'd never made them. I hadn't abandoned children. They were never my responsibility. I hadn't lied. My mother had. Every angle they tried to attack me from crumbled under the basic truth that I'd simply lived my own life while they'd tried to steal it. The sheer frustration of having no legitimate grievance, combined with the very real consequences they were facing, created a pressure cooker of resentment that had nowhere to go but inward. They were forced to sit with the reality they'd created, a family dynamic built on using one person until she finally said enough. I came home on December 29th with a tan, a clear head, and an unshakable sense of peace. My house was exactly as I'd left it. Clean, quiet, mine. I walked through each room, checking that nothing had been disturbed, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Safety in my own space. No one had ambushed me. No one had manipulated their way inside. My boundaries had held, physically and emotionally, and that realization made me sit down on my couch and just breathe. The revenge had been perfect, not because it hurt them, but because it freed me. I'd reclaimed my dignity without having to fight for it, without having to prove I deserved it. I just lived, and that was revolutionary. The messages waiting for me were predictable. My mother had sent a long, winding text about disappointment and family values, and how I'd embarrassed her in front of everyone. Josh sent something shorter and angrier, calling me selfish and saying I'd damaged his kids by abandoning them. Kelly's message was cold and formal, saying they'd reassess their relationship with me. I read each one with the detachment of someone reading a script they'd already memorized. These weren't apologies. These weren't reflections on their behavior. These were just more attempts to make their feelings my responsibility, their consequences my fault. And I was done carrying that weight. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I did something I should have done years ago. I blocked my mother's number. Then Josh's. Then Kelly's. I removed myself from the family group chat, unfollowed them on social media, and created an email filter that sent anything from their addresses straight to trash. The finality of it felt both terrifying and exhilarating. I was cutting off people who'd been in my life since birth, people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, but the truth was, their love had always been conditional. Conditional on my compliance, my availability, my willingness to shrink myself to make room for their needs. That wasn't love. That was exploitation. Some family members reached out to try to fix things, to mediate or encourage reconciliation. I was polite but firm. I appreciate your concern, but this is between me and them, and I've made my decision. I need space to heal from years of having my boundaries disrespected. A few people got defensive, saying I was breaking up the family or being dramatic. But others, the ones whose opinions actually mattered to me, sent messages of support. Cousin Rachel said she was proud of me. Uncle Tom said he wished he'd spoken up sooner. Even my grandmother, in her careful way, said she understood that sometimes distance is necessary for self-worth. The family wasn't breaking. It was just reorganizing around truth instead of dysfunction. The hardest part wasn't the cutting off. It was sitting with the grief of what I'd lost. Not the current relationship, which had been toxic and one-sided, but the hope I'd carried for decades that maybe, someday, they'd see me. Really see me. Value me. Include me in that family photo not as an afterthought, but as someone who mattered. I mourned the mother I'd wished I had. The brother who might have protected me instead of used me. The family that could have been built on mutual respect instead of convenient exploitation. That grief was real and painful, and I let myself feel it fully. But underneath it was something stronger. Relief. The exhausting performance of trying to earn love from people determined not to give it was finally over. I started therapy the following week. My therapist helped me see patterns I'd been too close to recognize. The parentification I'd experienced as the responsible one. The scapegoating when I didn't perform as expected. The narcissistic family system that required someone to absorb all the dysfunction so others could maintain their illusions. She told me something that made me cry. You didn't fail your family. You succeeded at saving yourself. And she was right. The justice I'd sought wasn't about punishing them. It was about refusing to be punished anymore. It was about looking at my life and deciding that my time, my peace, and my self-worth were not negotiable. I'd spent 30 years being the convenient one, the available one, the one who sacrificed. Now I was going to spend the rest of my life being the free one. So tell me, have you ever been the convenient one in your family? The person everyone assumes will just drop everything because your life somehow matters less than theirs? I want to hear your stories in the comments below. What's the craziest thing your family has volunteered you for without asking? Have you ever had to set a boundary so hard it felt like burning a bridge? And here's the real question that keeps me up at night. At what point does family loyalty become self-betrayal? When do you stop sacrificing your dignity for people who wouldn't sacrifice their convenience for you? Drop your thoughts below. I read every single comment, and trust me, knowing I'm not alone in this makes all the difference. If you've got a relative who treats your no like a maybe, or your boundaries like suggestions, share this video with them. Maybe they'll get the hint, or maybe they won't, and you'll realize you need to book your own cruise to Mexico. Either way, you deserve to reclaim your self-worth. And if you want more stories about standing up to family drama, exposing manipulation, and choosing yourself when everyone else expects you to choose them, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because I've got plenty more where this came from. And something tells me you need to hear them just as much as I needed to live them. Your time has value. Your boundaries are valid. And you are not selfish for refusing to be used. Remember that.